We can go ahead and get started so we won't take up any more of your time. So thank you all for joining Hook, Line, and Sinker, Reeling in Clients with Advertising. We are going to take advantage of Poll Everywhere today. I've shared a link in the chat box. Just go ahead, click that link, type in your name, submit questions throughout the event, and that is how we'll share questions to our presenters at the end. And then I'm going to pass it to Patty to share a little bit about the upcoming Heartland Regional Conference.
Hey, Patty, I'm happy to jump in too. Patty, did you want me to share your screen?
Yeah, I'm ready to share. Are you ready for me to go? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
So
I thought you were doing something else first and then it was me. Okay, hold on. Let me share my screen quick. Apologies.
No, I'll jump in here right away too, because hi everyone, Justin Julie, Director of Marketing Communications at Gannett Fleming, but more important for today's conversation, co-chair with Patty for the Heartland Regional Conference. We can't be more excited to welcome everyone to Milwaukee coming up this April. And Patty, actually, if you go to the next slide, you know, I think back to when Patty and I first started this journey. It was like October 2018 that we've applied, you know, had Milwaukee selected, and we've been planning ever since. So if you know anything about Milwaukee and have seen the development that's happened over the last handful of years in particular, it's an exciting city to explore. Yes, we're known for our breweries. Yes, Wisconsin's known for cheese. Yes, we have a great lakefront, all that good stuff. But we've got, we're starting to plan a pretty amazing event here coming up in late April. And so wanted to show a little bit of what that looks like from a program standpoint, and that's what Patty's going to cover. And I know right now we've got over 120 people already registered. So I really appreciate the chance to crash your party here a little bit and share a little bit more about why HRC is going to be a pretty amazing this year.
Yeah, I'll just give a little download on a few of our keynote speakers, and we do have a full lineup of talented speakers on our website as well, in addition to these three. So our conference theme is Dial It Up, and we have, you know, our tracks are centered around dialing up your marketing, dialing up your business development, and dialing up yourself. So these are our three keynote speakers. Darcy Luoma, she's going to be presenting on how to be mentally fit for life's challenges, which I feel like we can all use right now after the last couple of years. Beth Ridley is going to be sharing on successfully incorporating diversity and inclusion in the workplace. And Scott Butcher, many of you know him from SMPS, he does a ton of research on AEC industry trends, and he's going to be giving us some predictions for our future, so we can't miss that. But yeah, again, I encourage you to check out our website because we have many more talented speakers in addition to these three for our breakout sessions. All right, so here's just like a quick overview of our list of events that we're planning for the conference. A couple things I do want to highlight on here. On Wednesday, before the conference officially starts, Wednesday evening at the welcome reception, there's going to be it's a workshop day, and there's going to be two tracks, 2 3-hour tracks, one for marketing coordinators and one for business developers. The marketing coordinator track is with Melissa Lutz and Carla Thompson, two SMPS fellows with tons of experience to share on everything they know about the industry. In the business development track, Jen Newman and Doug Parker are going to be presenting, and this one is probably a lot of you have seen Jen speak before at different conferences, but this would be a great one also to bring a firm principal to attend as well. The workshop day is something you can add to your conference registration. If you've already registered, you can still add it, and it's well worth coming in a little bit early for just to kick things off. The second thing I want to note on this overview is we are currently taking submissions for the Pinnacle Awards. They are due March 4th. It's a great way to get recognized for your work, and we'll be having an awards ceremony at the event as well.
All right. So quick highlights on the program. Thanks, Patty, for that. Just a reminder to, yes, register today. Room blocks are filling up at the Pfister. It's a very cool historic hotel, kind of quintessential downtown Milwaukee space for us to have HRC in. Do, as Patty said, register for the workshop a day early if you can make it in. We'd love to have you there. And there are plenty of volunteer opportunities leading up to the event and at the event. So awards are due March 4th, and got to be honest, the more sponsors we get, the better experience we can create for HRC as well. So put a plug in there. In short, we're very much looking forward to a great, successful, and an event that's happening in Milwaukee in late April. And I'd be remiss if I didn't see Amanda on here and give a quick shout out for all the great work on the website, because that's where you can go to for more information. I appreciate the time we get to spend talking to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patty and Justin. All right, and with that, we will get rolling with introducing Amanda Rail and Amy Holland from Pixels and Ink Studio. So Amanda, go ahead and take it.
Hi. So yeah, as Justin alluded, we've been involved in creating the HRC website, and we did it actually the last go round too. And then Amy and I are both actually presenting. I'm sorry to plug some more of HRC, but Amy and I are actually presenting as well, a totally different topic about SEO and keyword, turning your website instead of it being a brochure into a lead generator. So we're excited about introducing that topic as well. But today we're here to talk about hook, line, and sinker. So we're talking about advertising for marketers. So Amy, I'm going to let you take.
Sure. So how many of you have ever been asked by your boss or leader in your company, hey, I forgot as part of our sponsorship package, we get an ad in the brochure. Can you put something together today? Like, I mean, I don't know, I'm sure that's happened to all of us, right? Or maybe you know months in advance, but you're thinking to yourself, I know they really want to incorporate this tagline that they've come up with, but this advertisement's not going to be very compelling. So today we're going to talk about advertising, and more specifically, what makes a good ad versus a bad one, and how do you create a good one quickly? What are the tips to getting the copyright, and how are digital ads changing our industry and how advertising works in our industry? So I know many of you are thinking, hey, but wait, AEC doesn't advertise. But here's the thing. So you probably do create advertisements. You show up in a conference brochure, you create a banner to display at a booth, you have a website. All of those basic principles we're going to talk about today, they apply to those as well. So even if you do not create actual advertisements, think about how these principles can apply elsewhere. And then the digital landscape is changing advertising. So we haven't advertised in the past, because why would you want to run a TV ad that reaches 100,000 people when you're trying to reach 20 of them, right? That really wouldn't make any sense. But with digital advertising, it's a very different ballgame. Now, targeted advertising can sometimes allow you to talk directly to your targeted audience. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today as well. And then we've also found that some services within our industry are actually already competing on advertising. We've run into a few of those already. And so we only expect that to grow. So, 6 or 7 years ago, we were telling everybody, hey, you ought to be paying attention to SEO and what your website's doing for your business. And our leaders were going, yeah, we'll get to that someday. And now everybody's talking about that. And we think advertising is going to be the same way. Then in a few years, everybody else is going to be paying attention to it as well. So before we actually get started with the presentation today, we wanted to ask you, and feel free to answer this just in the chat, in the Zoom chat directly, but what is it that you are advertising or are considering advertising? So is there a specific service, or is there something, a specific audience that you want to reach? If you can pop your answers in the chat, that would be great.
Architectural photography and video, libraries, healthcare, architecture and engineering,
So I'm sure that architectural photography and video, that's already, I'm sure you have a lot of competition in the advertising space already. I'm not so sure about libraries.
Oh, wow, elected officials.
Uh-huh.
Workplace research services.
Yeah, a range of different things.
Yeah.
Okay. So who are Amanda and I? Well, in a previous life, I started off as a journalist, and I came to understand how much words matter. Choosing the wrong ones gets you a bunch of angry phone calls. We learned that very quickly. But I also learned how to grab attention and write about complex issues. And then the last decade I've spent focusing on digital marketing, and more recently, I had worked with a laser scanning provider before I joined Amanda, and advertising was one of the main ways that we were bringing in new revenue to the business. And then about a year ago, I joined Amanda, and she's going to talk a little bit about Pixels and Ink.
Yeah, so I love this slide because it's a little bit of all of our history on a page. But the photo of the gal hanging siding, that was me as a child hanging siding with my mom and my sister there. I literally grew up in this industry. We were constantly remodeling our house, and I just really got introduced to construction at such a young age that it kind of stuck with me, and I haven't been able to leave the industry since. So I actually started out my career as an architect, and actually started in high school working for an architectural firm, and that eventually led to a firm where I was doing both architecture and had picked up helping out with their marketing. And then everybody's favorite, the economy took a downturn. I lost my job. Nobody was hiring pregnant architects. And so I was fortunate enough to find a job working and developing a marketing group for an engineering firm who had never had marketing before. So they put a lot of trust in me to grow that. And then that's actually where I met Amy. And the photo there is the two of us at the Philadelphia conference way back when Build Business was in Philadelphia. But she and I worked together, and I really appreciated her ability to take the words that she speaks so fondly of and putting them to design. So I bring that design perspective from being an architect. And so that's kind of where we landed with. So I have ran with Pixels and Ink Studio for 4 years now. And as Amy said, she's been with me for a year now. So, but Pixels and Ink is really a reflection of what we do. We handle digital aspects, the Pixels part, and ink, which is print and advertising as well. So yeah, so who doesn't think of Don Draper when we think about advertising? But it includes a lot these days. Most B2B companies are a lot more concerned about appearing at the top of Google search or a sponsored post on platforms like LinkedIn, and even retargeting prospecting lists or even stealing from competitors. Sorry, Amy.
Oh, that's okay.
Mine's slipping to the next one. So as we talk through all these principles, think about how they are relevant, not just in print, but in platforms that you may not have even used before. So how do they apply on, or maybe ones that you do use often? So how they apply on Facebook or LinkedIn, how does it translate in a Google search? Many of these principles that you've heard about before, but you might find interesting to think about how it plays out in a different platform. So one example here that we have on the screen, I'm pretty sure everybody's seen this particular Coke campaign that's been around for ages. But I myself kind of got wrapped into the participation of this and the engagement. And the picture there in the center is a picture of my Coke on a plane ride to another Build Business conference where I tagged Share a Coke and tagged visiting legends at Build Business, and it got plenty of engagement on my own platform, which means tremendous amount of engagement beyond that for Coke. So if you want to click on. So the hook. So what is the hook? Who knows the purpose of a headline? Is it to sell? No. To get people to the second line? We know that people don't buy based on one line of copy. We need to build trust, but first we need to get their attention. The average human sees 5,000 ads a day, and we ignore most of them. So who has time to pay attention to all of that? A great hook is like a tap on the shoulder. Hey, you, pay attention. So let's talk about the hook a little bit more. There are 5 main components to a great hook, and not all hooks will do all of these, but they have to do at least one of them. Otherwise, it's just boring. And the best hooks use all 5. So let's talk through the 5.
So the first one is that it is intellectually curious in some way. We like this one in particular because, I mean, who thinks to use a person yawning in their advertisement, right? Like, I think it would automatically get pushback from a lot of people. But it's a great way to catch your attention right away because it's different from what you expect. And this is an advertisement. It has very few words, but it's an advertisement that is showing that McDonald's is open 24 hours a day. But in this, it's purely a visual hook.
And this one, my kids love, especially, just kind of keeping on with the McDonald's theme here. But these are very simple portions of an ad campaign that use a phone as a graphic. So we've got stacks of phone here that basically represent, we've got an egg McMuffin here, we've got fries, and we've got a Big Mac, just being represented by colors of phone. But if you kind of combine the whole concept of phone with food, and then you put it together, it's basically an ad for their mobile ordering, which is what this whole campaign was about. And somebody mentioned that that's one of their favorite ads.
Yeah, and we like it because it's attention. It's got an intellectual curiosity to it. Immediately, you are like, you have to stop and think a little bit. What is this? What are they telling me? So it causes you to pause.
And now somebody wants fries. So, so the other thing about this, though, is making sure it's clear. So I don't know if any of you are TikTok fans, but this poor woman on TikTok was trying to figure out how to use the mobile ordering stand to order her food outside at the curb. So yeah, just being very clear with your messaging is important. So it's also something that has the potential to make our lives better in that moment. Of course, this has gotten somewhat extreme in recent years. And I pulled up a specific example that I shared with Amy not too long ago. This popped up in my own feed. It was an advertisement talking about Elementor, which is a web, it's like a WordPress web developing software, and which she and I use very frequently, or we use WordPress web developers frequently, not Elementor in particular. But so this ad I thought was really funny because it actually says Amanda and Amy with an I in the ad. So I wasn't quite sure if they were getting that specific with the ad or if it was just coincidence, but it was worth sharing with her. Yeah. But this was an ad that's really trying to attract my attention right in the moment when I need it, because they understand that I'm working with WordPress and need a solution often. So,
right, from a targeting perspective, this ad is right on the money for who we are in terms of knowing that we're small business owners that need a simplified solution. And so the copy speaks directly to a need that we have. And it, of course, it's amazing how targeted some of these ads have become in more recent years.
So the third one, it's emotionally stimulating. So who feels a reaction when you see an ad? What emotion can you feel from it? So these were a couple of examples that we found. Women shouldn't voice their opinions, except the int is is wiped out. And then also this Excedrin one was advertised around election time, where it said 73% of Americans will have an election headache this year. So they're tying their research with their product and with the current events.
Sorry.
So number 4, it promises to make your life better. So we've been taught to focus on problems, but sometimes an ad can actually solve a problem that we don't know we had yet. So we pulled this one in particular because it says iPhone 6 on it, which has been a while ago. But these ads were they came out in a time where not everybody was on an iPhone yet. And, it kind of presented this idea that you could shoot fantastic photography by having the latest and greatest iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
And recently, just a couple of weeks ago, my husband and I were in the San Francisco area, and they had a number of Apple advertisements up on billboards around the city that really pointed toward the new capabilities on the latest iPhone that speaks toward macro photography. So it was really showing all these photos of the inside of what a mushroom looks like or something silly, but it was really there to kind of present this problem or present a solution to a problem that we don't know we didn't need a solution for yet. So I don't know that I need to take macro photography, but it seemed pretty interesting. So
and so this is an example of how sometimes that can turn into digital. So in this one, I had Googled top performing Facebook ads. And these people are guessing at what my problem might be without me having to tell them. So the second one down in particular, stop wasting money on Facebook ads, use our simple and free tool, is guessing that I might be somebody who's producing an ad and I might be finding it overly expensive and not getting a good return. The third one, Facebook ads that work, ideal ways to get more traffic, is kind of the same, thought pattern. They're guessing that I might be somebody who's producing ads, and what are some knowledge that I might not have yet. So again, it promises to make my life better without me having to have identified my specific problem for them.
And number 5 here, it fits within your brand, right? And so we pulled some fun examples that we found out there in the world of advertisements that may not fit the brand. So the first one here on the left, the Burger King ad. So it might be pushing the boundaries just a little bit, but I probably wouldn't want this to show up in front of my youngest, who is starting to learn to read. Or the middle one is kind of a personal favorite here, but this Mother's Day, get back to the job that really matters. And it's a mom and a daughter cleaning together. So
right.
Yeah, that makes me feel really good as a progressive mother. And then the last one here, my oldest son actually helped me find, but it's all about ad placement too, when you think about things. So this just happens to be a delivery truck with a sliding door. And when you take Starbucks and remove a few letters, it kind of creates a different brand.
So we wanted to take these elements. So intellectually curious, it stimulates your brain in some way. It's relevant to your audience. It's emotionally stimulating, promises to make your life better, and it fits your brand. And then show a common advertisement that we see some version of pretty much all the time. So this is an advertisement for a civil engineer. It's the people who make the difference. And so we know why people create this ads. We actually are guilty of doing it ourselves, and especially before we were consultants. And it's because it's easy. It passes C-suite muster. Nobody finds it controversial. But the problem is that nobody finds it compelling either, right? Nobody looks at this ad and wants to know more information about who these people are. It's the people that make the difference does not make me feel intrigued to suddenly find out more about Bob, who's running the company. And there's no visual imagery here that makes me feel like I need to stop reading or stop flipping or stop doing whatever I'm doing to focus more on this ad. And so what we want to do through the course of today is talk a little bit about how we could take something like this and make it better. We also wanted to show, this is another example here on the left, complex projects call for unique solutions. I don't know how many of you, I have certainly written a version of this in the past, right? It's kind of an easy thing that we all kind of land on. But if you start to read this ad, it doesn't really tell me much of anything about what these people are going to do for me, how my life is going to be better. Versus on the right is a better example. This one is obviously industry adjacent, but is very clear on the one on the right that the fire rated glass is clear. And then the copy reflects that. So no wires, no amber tints, no films, no laminates, super clear is the name of the product. And right away, just from the visual imagery, you know what it is, what the message is, what they're trying to get across. So there are a number of hooks that come up again and again that do work, that stop the scroll. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about that. So how do we make, it's the people who make the difference and unique solutions for complex projects. How do we make that better? So there's a number of hooks that we use again and again, and it's kind of a cheat. The first one is education and statistics. For some reason, research shows that we think statistics, our brain thinks statistics are kind of like candy. So we're attracted to it, even if we aren't a numbers person, and it feels very credible and establishes a lot of trust. So if I say 35% increase in productivity, you think that that's based on something, right? Hopefully it is based on something. Hopefully you have some data to back that up. But that automatically kind of it provides a little bit of, what is the deeper research behind that? Confirming beliefs. So anytime that you can make somebody feel sane, that's exactly how I feel. That's why I get addicted to TikTok personally, right? Because you're scrolling through and somebody is also losing their keys between the couch cushion and you think, oh my gosh, thank God it's not just me that happens to. Anytime that you can create that feeling of, oh, I feel that way too, that's another way of confirming their beliefs and creating something that is going to stop the scroll. Esteem, this is a big one in our industry, particularly if you're a sub-consultant or somebody who's working for someone else. That person that you're working for wants to be doing better in their own job, right? And so they want to, beyond food and shelter and security, we all want respect from others. So how can you play into that? How can you create a hook that's going to let them know you are going to make them better at their job because of what you do? Threat, warning, and pain. So we're pretty fearful of looking negative in this industry, but if you can name the threat or name the pain, that is a great way to catch attention. And that does not necessarily mean calling out competitors. So one thing that we like to think of, or one thing that we've used a few times, is change orders, right? That's a pain for everybody in the industry. And if you can help people figure out and use that word, how are you going to avoid change orders, that catches attention. Fear of missing out. So this also ties into esteem. So we want to be in the know and we want the piece of information. What if everybody else knows a piece of information that you don't, right? Are they going to get ahead? Are they going to be doing better than you? So particularly when you're thinking about an advertisement that is talking about tools for young marketers, or if you're thinking about, when you're trying to keep up with certain trends or whatnot, that fear of missing out, you think, oh my goodness, if I don't click, if I don't attend this webinar, if I don't learn this key piece of information. Everybody else is going to know it, and they're going to be better at their job than I am. And then another one is relevancy. So right now, for instance, people are looking for solutions on incorporating diversity. People who have the answers to that will get attention. So if there are ways that you can tie into relevancy, that's always another great way to stop the scroll. Shock value. So that one doesn't have to actually be shocking. I go back to the one that women shouldn't have opinions, right? The actual message isn't that shocking, but the way they have framed it and the visuals make you feel that shock for just a moment. And then social proof is the last one. So testimonials, 5-star reviews, anytime that you can show other people had a good experience, that makes you feel like you're going to have a good experience too.
We're going to kind of back it up just for a moment here and talk about emotional branding, which is all part of the hook, line, and sinker concept. So what is it? It's the process of forming a relationship between your consumer and a product or brand by provoking their emotions. So this has kind of been a favorite graphic of mine that I found recently, but it really kind of shows how we're not too dissimilar from fish, and it kind of ties into our hook, line, sinker conversation here. But as cavemen, we needed food and shelter and to feel like we were part of a tribe, and with that, our chances of survival increased, and that instinct of belonging hasn't really gone away. We want to belong, and we want for our tribe to see us as part of that community. So your modern brain in the frontal cortex is responsible for problem solving, memory, language, judgment, impulse control, and reasoning. Your primal brain, the hindbrain and medulla, is responsible for survival, drive, and instinct. And in this graphic, you see that our primal brain is not dissimilar from the fish's. This part of our brain has been rooted this way since our brains began to develop all those years ago. So that tribal part of our brain, you'll see there is part of the center part of our brains, and that is what we all started off with back in the caveman days, that has developed with all the other parts of our brains over time. And so if you think about emotional responses to things, those are rooted in our fight or flight moments, which come from that piece of the brain. So thinking about, and I think you can see this better than you can when we present this in person, but thinking about your core human emotions, we can really kind of break it down into like 16 or 20 different things and how we react. And so if you're looking at this quadrant, there's high control over how we feel about things versus low control, which is at the bottom. On the right, you have positive, and on the left, you have negative influences. So happiness and joy kind of shows up in that upper right quadrant. Astonishment and surprise, for example, would show up in the bottom right. And then you'll kind of see all the other emotional responses. So at the center of that is our advertisement. So depending on where we want to take that, it really influences our decision making. So if you think about the ASPCA with Sarah McLachlan, we are watching that and probably feeling sadness and despair, which is down in that lower quadrant. So if you really think about the advertisements you see on a daily basis and how it really affects our human emotional responses, that's based on our emotions, and advertisements can be designed to influence how we want to proceed after seeing an ad. So did you know that sales strategies that appeal to emotions are up to 7 times more effective? Trust is the second most important factor. Price comes in after that. Emotions can be just as effective in B2B sales as it is in B2C sales. And then lastly, a superior client experience can maximize your efforts to sell. So these are just some quick words that we've pulled from a tool that we love to use with our clients, especially when our clients are either creating their brand or doing a rebrand or a refresh. We use this tool called Brand Deck, and it's an exercise with cards that we've translated into a digital platform as well. But where we can really kind of use language to dive into, or specific words to dive into who they are as a business authentically. And even color can trigger our emotions as well. So if you think about, McDonald's, for instance, the golden arches, it, reflects happiness or friendliness or optimism. Or if you think about many engineering firms use the color blue, and they're trying to come across as trustworthy and intelligent and with authority. And then if you think about even political ads that might have more red in them, they're really trying to invoke excitement or energy. So this is kind of another tool that we use when we're going through brands and rebrands with our clients, to really help them kind of focus in on even what colors to choose for their logos, or and you can use this in your advertising world as well.
So we talked a little bit about the hook in terms of, hey, how is it that you're going to grab attention? But the second half of that is the line. So how do you create copy that helps grab that attention? And so we have a workbook that we're going to share with you. We use this when we do in-person engagements. You can also follow along through our presentation, but if you'd like to open up the workbook, you can look there as well. And
I just dropped it into the chat. So.
Perfect. So I'll give you a second to open that up. But what we're going to look at is some exercises, and we're going to ask that you go through this with us to come up with some ideas of how you could create a better ad. So the very first thing that we're going to do, and you'll notice these are all on the same line in the workbook, is you're going to ask yourself, why are you creating this advertisement? So is it because you want to reach a certain audience, because you want to promote a certain service, or because you have a certain platform that you are going to advertise on? And usually it's not starting with the platform, but we've all been in situations where we need to create an ad for a conference brochure, what is it? So the very first thing that you're going to do is you're going to identify within one of these boxes, pick one of them, and you're going to get very specific. So for instance, if you are starting with an audience, you do not want to start with something vague like developers. You want to say, okay, I want to reach developers under the age of 35 who are fairly new to the industry. You want to get as specific as possible, because that's going to inform the other options. So for instance, if that was my goal, I would be using platforms, more modern platforms, digital platforms, to reach them, right? Because it's a younger audience than if it was an older one. You might also start with a specific service. So if you're going to do a service, you don't want to say, okay, I want to advertise surveying. You want to say, I am going to advertise to, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a minute. You're going to say that I want to advertise to lenders at banks who know that their client is going to need an ALTA survey, or to title companies who know their client is going to need an ALTA survey and who are going to be referring to me. And so I am going to narrow my ad to that specific group of people, and that's going to be how I'm going to advertise surveying. So each of these, you're going to try to get as specific as possible, and then that informs the other options. Let's see. While you're thinking about that, I want to make a quick note about selecting your digital platform. So this is a question that we get asked a lot. Okay, so there's LinkedIn advertising, there's Google search, there's micro advertising where you're targeting a specific email list. How do I know which one I should be using, which one's best, right? And our answer is always, well, it depends on what it is that you're advertising. So if you're trying to reach the top of the funnel, search and social media advertising, display ads, those can all be a great way to reach a very broad audience, but it's not necessarily going to be very specific. In the middle is high intent and long tail keywords or targeting to broad email lists. Those types of things can help move your potential buyer through the funnel. So if you already have a buyer that knows who you are and you're trying to get them further down the funnel, these types of things can help bring them down the funnel. And then the last one is micro advertising. So that's where you might be selecting, hey, I know that there's a select group of people who are on this board that we're trying to get in front of. How can I put an advertisement directly in front of them? So as you're selecting which platform it's going to be on, keep in mind, you know, what how targeted the audience is that you're trying to reach. All right, so after you've got that first block identified, you're going to move down to the next set of exercises. And these exercises are all about developing empathy with your audience and identifying what their problem is that might not be immediately apparent to you. So the first one is the 5 whys. And this is not ours. We've stolen it from Hooked, How to Build Habit-Forming Products. I don't know if any of you have read that book. And then they've stolen it from Toyota. But the point is that you ask yourself 5 times why until you get to the deeper need or emotion. And that can help you market to the underlying need instead of what it is that the client is telling you. So for instance, in this example, it says, this example is based off of a 2-star review that was left for a hair color product. And the person had said that their hair was ruined and had to be fixed professionally. So, but you know, your product is a good product. It's not ruining people's hair. So why did this happen? Well, people are applying it incorrectly. Why did that happen? The product directions were confusing. Why is that? It's hard to explain how to apply it in the text, and there needs to be imagery. Why is that? Well, videos and imagery have never been created, right? So you're trying to get to the root trigger of why are people applying this incorrectly? Well, because there's no visual guides, right? So what we'd like you to do is to think about your own need that you've identified at the top there, and then go through the same process of asking yourself, why, until you can reach a deeper emotional understanding. The next exercise is we stole from StoryBrand. If you guys have not read this book, I don't know that it's particularly insightful for marketers, but our clients have been coming to us more and more saying, I read StoryBrand and that's what I want to do, right? And it's all of the things that we as marketers for years have been saying, hey, this is what you need to focus on, but the book does a good job of articulating it and CEOs are talking about it and it's kind of an aha moment for them, right? So we like now sharing it with our clients because it's easy for them to understand. And they have a solution, or they have an example in their book where they say, if you're a private chef and a person comes up to you and says, what do you do for a living? And you say, oh, I'm a private chef. They may immediately get off topic and start saying, oh, that's interesting. What are your favorite restaurants around here? Or, you know, you must be really good at cooking. Where did you learn how to cook, right? And that's not a conversation that's probably going to help you sell your product. But alternatively, if you meet somebody and you say, you know how families never get time to have dinner on the table, and then when they do, it's just not the most healthy option, and it's very frustrating for a lot of people, for a lot of families, to try to, you know, create the time and feed their children a healthy meal. I'm a private chef that helps resolve that problem. So all of a sudden you can see how this person can help you. And in Marketing Made Simple, they talk about focusing your one-liner on problem, solution, results. And it's reforming your elevator pitch, basically, to focus on problem, solution, and results. And this applies in marketing as well. If you can identify the problem up front, even if you don't end up using it in your advertisement, it helps you craft that better solution that has that implied problem that people can relate to, and they understand right away, oh yeah, that's my problem too. I have that problem, and here are the results that this company is going to create to fix that. Here's another example from StoryBrand. Most parents get stressed when they think about taking their child to the dentist. Kids' teeth are fun and welcoming office, puts kids at ease so they aren't afraid, and their parents actually enjoy the dentist visit. So you can certainly imagine an ad that is targeted to this specific need of how can we create a relaxed dentist office so that we can make parents feel more at ease. And then the third empathy exercise is from Seth Godin, and it's basically a fill in the blank template, right? So my service is for people who believe blank. I will focus on people who want blank, and I promise that engaging with what I make will help you get blank. He offers this really great example of a piano teacher debating between rigid, harsh lessons for kids who want to be the first in competition and a piano teacher who's gentle and encouraging, right? So you're probably in one advertisement not going to reach both of those audiences, but you can reach one of those audiences really well. You can either position yourself as the piano teacher that gets kids to competition, or gets kids winning competitions, or you can position yourself as the gentle piano teacher who's very encouraging. You can't be both of those things. And then if you can pick a second or third axis, so jazz or classical, are you cheap or expensive, right? Then you're speaking directly to an audience versus advertising your services as a piano teacher and just being so broad that nobody it relates to what it is that you're trying to convey. And then the final exercise is ask yourself, am I offering a benefit or am I offering a feature, right? So the classic example is a feature is 2 terabytes of space, but a benefit is you never run out of space to store your kids' photos. In this industry, for instance, 50 years of experience is also a feature. What's the benefit of that experience, right? So be careful that when you are offering up advertisements that you are not just listing features, but you're getting to the real benefit for your client. So let's get back to our bad ad. So how can we make this better? So we can assume from the photo that these guys do transportation engineering and that they're somewhat proud of their community meetings to get buy-in before they start a big project. So for the purposes of today, I'm going to assume that they have done a big intersection, but maybe the majority of their projects are roundabouts. So how can we market that, knowing that that is their specialty? So in this first one, we've gone through the 5 whys. So municipal engineers have reservations about roundabouts. I don't know how many of you have worked with transportation engineers in the past, but this is very true. So the public still has a lot of hesitation about roundabouts, and it frustrates the civils who are creating them. So as we work through these 5 whys, why is that? Well, municipal engineers have reservations about roundabouts. Why? Well, the public is difficult to deal with. Why? Traditional education doesn't work to relieve the pressure. Why? It's a bunch of engineers standing in front of the room and they can't communicate their message. And then why? Engineers are usually bad at communication. Okay, so the offer is, hey, we're better at dealing with the public than these other guys are. You can also see how this could translate into StoryBrand. Most municipal engineers hate dealing with the public before a roundabout installation. At Acme, we take the pressure off your plate with education that actually works. So by moving this ad from being something very broad to people that make the difference, hey, we're an engineer, you should hire us, to something that is much more specific and targeted at people who are looking to do roundabouts or who are looking for a municipal engineer that does that size of projects, we're able to create an ad that is much more compelling to that target audience. And then, so the next step is turning your idea into copy. So once you've identified, hey, these are this is my empathy message that I want to get across. This is what I want people to feel when they read the ad. Obviously, you do not want 100 words. So how can you condense that down? And these are some tricks that we use to turn your idea into copy. So one is revisiting the list of hooks. So education and statistics and beliefs and esteem and relevancy and shock value. Is there something in here that you can use that would help get your message across? And then the next one is consider other copywriting tools. So reciprocity. So a lot of times this ends up being gated content. Can you give your potential audience something that helps that makes them feel like they already are in debt to you? So with gated content, this is often the case. This is the strategy we're using, right? In terms of, hey, I'll give you this free download that shows you the steps on how to accomplish this. And in exchange, you give me your email address. The word because, so this is an interesting copywriting tool. There was a study done where somebody would go up to someone who was in line for the Xerox machine and would say, excuse me, can I use the Xerox machine? And I think it was like 70% of the time, I don't have the exact number here in my slide, but it was like 75% of the time that people would say yes, but not all of the time. But if they said, excuse me, I need to use the Xerox machine because I need to make copies, it would go up to like 95% of the time. And we all know that's no real reason at all. But the word because helps kind of in our brains make us think, oh, they've got a good reason for it, right? The next one is a common enemy or stakes. We talked about that a little bit before. A good example is change orders, authority. So people will accept an idea if it's backed by an expert. Obviously, these are why all the commercials have a celebrity attached to them. But how can you present authority? Well, sometimes it's associating yourself with a bigger company that is recognizable. It can be a testimonial in some cases. So authority can be another element that you can use in copywriting to help grab that attention. And then the next one is anchoring and priming. So in anchoring and priming, I love this example of they put a website for a mattress company in front of people, and in the background, in one version, they had clouds, and in another version, they had dollar symbols. And so, of course, and when they asked afterwards, what's the most important thing to you when you're purchasing a mattress, the people who had clouds in the background identified comfort as being most important, and the ones with dollar symbols identified cost as being most important. And most people could not identify or not they weren't able to write down what was in the background of the website, but on a subconscious level, they had absorbed, hey, that's the most important aspect to me. So that's another copywriting tool. If you can think of ways to prime your people visually, if you can get them in the right mindset, it can be another tool. And then the last one is storytelling. So anytime that you can create relatability and trust through your copy is another tool that you can sometimes use. And so what Amanda and I like to do is, once we've decided what our message is, how are we going to be empathetic? We kind of like to run down the list, right? What are some ways that we can get to better copy quicker? So some examples here. Instead of the people who make the difference, we talked about developing that empathy message of an engineer who was better at dealing with the public when they were designing roundabouts. So you can see some examples here of copy that might produce a better reaction. So 12% of roundabout projects fail due to public outcry. So that's an example of using, and I can't remember where that stat came from, but it turns out to be a real stat. But that's a good example of using stats to pull attention. Roundabouts save lives, bad public education ruins careers. So again, that's threats, warning, and pain. So, right, I am the municipal engineer. I don't want to have my career, I don't want to have that bad negative attention, right? Exactly. And then the next one, traffic lights suck, but then again, so does dealing with this guy, right? So that's shock value. So if you can somehow write it in a way that gets people's attention right away by saying something a little bit shocking, of course, it's a great method. And then the last one is, we've installed 3 roundabouts in Everyville, but no one even came close to providing the level of education that Acme provided. So that one's social proof. So again, it's just kind of going through the list and deciding on ones that might work for you. Obviously, they don't work in every situation, but it does help you kind of get your brain moving to the right direction so that you can help develop that copy that is attention grabbing and isn't boring. And then some tips to help you when you get stuck, right? So I think this is, okay, now I'm trying to make it short and sweet, and I'm trying to convey my message. So what are some tips when I'm getting stuck? So write it long. Don't be afraid to write it long, and then edit, bring it back down. Try different voices. So if you write it like your mom, or you write it like an 8-year-old, do you stumble across something interesting? Write it rude. So forget all of the professionalisms that we use in everyday life. How can you write it in a way that's purposely rude? Does it kind of get your brain moving in the right direction? Once you have a draft, show your copy to an outsider, let them ask you questions. What is it that is confusing them? What do they not know about it? Create the visuals first, and then look at what space you have left for copy. This is one that Amanda and I do because she's the visual person, I'm the copy person. And so sometimes she will say, or we'll be coming up with an idea for an ad, and I'll say, okay, come up with the visual first, and then we'll try to see what makes sense there. And then you write it out of order. So you don't necessarily have to start with the headline. So particularly if you've created an empathy message, what are the 2 to 3 lines that would be further down? Does that give you an idea for the headline? There's a comment in here that somebody said, there's a great piece of advice I got from a stand-up comic that works for just about any type of copywriting. Write something down, write whatever comes to mind, then keep cutting it down so you can say the same thing with the fewest words possible. Yeah, absolutely. And that was something when I was a journalist that we absolutely had to do, was just keep editing it down. And it's amazing how many times you can chop, 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 chop. And you realize, oh, I've just said the same thing and it's so much shorter now. And then lastly, a pro tip is test your hooks. So if you think you've stumbled across something and you think it's really great, before you even show it to your leadership or before you show it to the firm, if you have the ability to spend $100 on digital advertising and see if it gets attention. We do this with A/B testing, and it's surprising sometimes even to us what it is that people click on and that what gets attention. And so anytime that you can spend a little bit of money to get some data-driven results, then you can go and be like, hey, look, this is my reasoning for why this works, versus, bringing rough copy into a meeting and having everybody nitpick over it and getting yourself into that kind of, personal hell where you're trying to write by committee. And so that's a technique that we use a lot of times with our clients, where it's like, hey, we came up with a few ideas, maybe a safer one that we thought would get approval, and then maybe some more outrageous ones. Let's go out and test it and see what works.
It looks like we had another comment here. I give Hemingway editor 3 thumbs up. So I think you're skipping ahead, but we've got some favorites to share with you. And Hemingway is one of those that we that we enjoy using. So let's talk a little bit about the Syncer. So once you've got your visuals figured out and your copy figured out, like what's next? So Amy, if you want to click on to the next one
Oh,
here.
yeah, sorry.
That's okay. I know you're probably getting to drink a coffee after all that. So yeah, so you need to take a moment and add a clear call to action, but only one. That's kind of our piece of advice here. So can you figure out what the quality of leads are that you're bringing in? Can you use QR codes and print ads, a landing page when you're dealing with digital? You can use a landing page to entice people to hand over information and that gated content that Amy was talking about. Even if you can get them to the landing page, you can retarget them later if you know how. So
Yeah.
I think we all have visited the shoe store website and then found the shoes in our Facebook feed. But yeah, the retargeting is a whole different discussion that I'm sure we could do.
Yeah,
A session.
yeah, but no, for an ad, it's great because certainly if you're doing an ad, and we've started to see this, I think I've seen this in some popular magazines even, where they're putting a QR code to a landing page. That landing page isn't asking me to do anything. It's not asking for an email address. It's not asking for anything. But because I visited that landing page, they're going to start retargeting me. And so they know I'm a little bit interested in that ad. And so they're going to start sending me more ads that might be a little further down the funnel. And so we can be using the same techniques. So how do we get that clear call to action to start being a measurement device so that we can start to measure if our ad was effective? And then advertising in AEC is still, I think, digital advertising in AEC is still relatively new. So for a lot of our clients, they know they want to experiment with it, but they're trying to figure out when is it beneficial. And so one thing that we wanted to talk about today was what areas or what markets is advertising the most effective. And so some of our experiences are anytime that you are wishing at your firm, I wish my clients also knew we did this. So they know that we do engineering, but they don't also know that we do landscape architecture, right? So marketing to your existing client list is one way to tackle that. So if they are getting an ad regularly that says, did you forget, but we also do LA, right? I'm sure we could come up with some better copy for that, but helps them kind of as that reminder of, yeah, oh yeah, I forgot, they also do X. The second one there is newness. So a new office, that's a particularly hard thing for marketers. And this is a great opportunity to do a campaign. So sort by region, by industry and job title, run an advertising campaign only to the people in that particular region, or run an advertising campaign in the regions that you already are in, advertising that you're now in this new city. Make it clever somehow, right? So offer them a free guide or something to help, entice them. By being targeted, advertising can be a really good tool there. Unfamiliar audiences. So this is where it works best. So what I mean by that is if you have a product or service that people are using Google to find, you have to figure out a way to make that work for you. So there are already lots of segments of our industry that are competing on advertising because people are literally typing in. An example of this in my own experience was laser scanning and BIM modeling. So architects would not be interested in the product when we were trying to sell it to them in person because it was too complex. They already had processes in place. They'd listen to the pitch. Okay, yeah, that's great. Maybe someday we'll use that. But then all of a sudden they have RFQ come across their desk that says that it's required and they have to use it. And they were literally Googling laser scanning providers, BIM modeling providers, and that segment, that industry is already competing on those terms for advertising. And so if you have any parts of your business that somebody has to turn to Google for some reason, I would bet that advertising is already existing and you want to be competing there. And then, so another one that advertising ends up being good for is super specific micro targeting. So this is where email lists are great, conference lists. If you have targeted client lists of like, hey, these are clients that or these are potential clients that we don't have yet, but we know we might want to have them someday, or we think we would be a good fit for them. You can plop those email lists directly into LinkedIn, into some other platforms, and advertise specific to those lists, so that that can be a tool that can be very effective. And then anything that people are already finding you for online, but be sure to be specific on that. So for instance, a lot of people will say, well, I'm being found online for architecture services or whatever. And what we'll come to find out is that it's for people who are looking directly for architecture in Indianapolis. And so it's not necessarily that broad of a service of just, hey, architecture, but it's out of town developers or out of town people who have a project in that specific city. And so how can we leverage that for advertising? And then lastly, we just wanted to cover some tools that we use that we think are great. Someone already mentioned the Hemingway editor, SpyFu or SEMrush or Moz are favorites of ours. All of these are tools that allow you to see what your competitors are spending on advertising. None of them are 100% accurate because they're all making educated guesses, but by using a variety, we like to, before we had our own firm and before when we were working in-house, we would just sign up for free trials of these and spend a few days going through competitors, downloading keyword lists. This is a great way to find out what your competitors are already doing for Google advertising in particular. Facebook also has an ads library where they publish all of the ads published on their platforms. You can search any company's ads and view additional data about it. And LinkedIn has, if you go to the profile of a firm that you're interested, so this one's AECom, and you click on where it says posts, then you also get a button that says ads, and you can see the ads that they've been running on LinkedIn recently. So another great way to spy on competitors or to spy on companies that might do what you do but are larger than you and might be ahead of the game. This one is a little bit different. This one is a spy tool. This one helps users find the best hashtags to grow their social account engagement. So you type in a word related to your ad, you can discover data about how it may perform before it goes out in the world. And then here's the Hemingway app. We have a few different tools we use. We also really like Grammarly and we like Content Row, but all of these tools help you identify unnecessary words, help you identify overly complex sentences, and help you write easier to read copy. Yeah, here's Content Row. It's similar. You can get insights. It provides suggestions on the quality of your writing. Yeah, and that was it actually. And so what we'd like to do before we go any further is ask if anybody has any questions or if they have specific problems that they'd like for us to think about and go from there.
And also, we offer a free hour consultation. So if you are interested in chatting with us, this QR code is a link directly to Amy and I's calendar. So you can schedule something with us if you'd like. We also, at the bottom of each of the slides, we've had a link there to a post on or a landing page on our website that gives you some more of the details that we talked about today.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Amanda and Amy. We've actually had some questions come through on the poll everywhere. So I'll start with one of the first ones we got. It says, in my experience, it's difficult to convince firm owners to try something new, something bold. It's the whole new is scary thing. Have you had similar experiences? How do you convince them it's okay to do new things?
Yes, and we have had similar experiences. And I think if you can in any way pitch it as being a trial, and I think we referred a little bit to A/B testing earlier, but if you can say, hey, we're going to put 2 versions out there and see what we get a reaction to, I think firm owners respond well to that data. So if you're pretty sure that an idea is going to work, and you can figure out a way to put out either multiple versions or to collect data related to it, that is always a good tool for convincing them to try new ideas. Do you have other thoughts on that, Amanda?
Yeah, I was going to say, what we usually say too is that if you can relate it back to your strategic goals in any way, also, that is a great way to get buy-in from your leadership as well. If it's going to help you achieve one of those goals that you've set or that the organization has set together, then that's going to really help persuade them as well. And as Amy mentioned in a previous slide, the StoryBrand book and the other book on the slide there, she's not lying. We've had a lot of owners come to us directly saying, I've read this book. So it seems like that's a great way to connect with your leadership as well as through this book. But yeah,
I'm sure we've all had that moment when we're like, yes, I've been telling you these things for the last 5 years. Why haven't you listened? But if you can listen to a book and you can be convinced because of the book, then sure, I'll buy into that too.
Right. I just leaned over to Megan and I told her that I had the branding book. So it was a gift to me. Yes. When I started off in marketing. So I will say it's a great book. All right. So we got another question. It says, you mentioned running 2 ads and seeing how they perform before you bring the copy to a board. Company owners, how are you able to do paid advertising before having people review the copy?
Yeah, so we have a little bit of an advantage there because we now have a little bit of our own budget that we're able to use. But a lot of times, even when I worked in-house, I was able to get leadership buy-in on that to say, like, give me a really small budget here. And we're talking like maybe $100 for 2 ads and let's do a trial run, And so that's not going to get you very far. You're not going to advertise to a big group of people with that. But I guess it's really about establishing that trust with your leadership and getting that buy-in that, hey, this is an effective way to be able to create better ads and to allow me to do my job better. You're paying me to, do this for you. And really, this is kind of a small drop in the bucket for us to test it out, for us to be better at this. And if we can be better at it, then the ad is going to perform better and it's going to bring us a better return. Amanda, do you want to add to that at all?
I was thinking from a strategy or more of a strategic lean on this one, but if you can lean into like SpyFu, for example, or the examples Amy shared with checking in on your competitors on LinkedIn or Facebook, coming to your leadership and showing them what their competitors are doing is also compelling for them too. So
that's actually a really good example. We've had a number of clients and a number when we were in-house where people were like, I don't know, advertising seems like something that our industry isn't really made for. And we were able to be like, well, here's the list of your competitors and here's what we think their budgets probably are. And then all of a sudden it's like,
we got to do it.
Doing this.
Yeah. Like, why are we not doing this? Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Having it kind of, I felt like while you guys are saying that, that's where that data comes in that you guys talked about. So, okay. Thank you. We got one more. What are the best resources to learn how to compete or best position yourself for organic search results?
Yes. So we do a whole other presentation on this. Actually, it's the one that we're doing at HRC, right? Isn't that right, Amanda?
Yep.
Yeah. And so it's about SEO. And so there's a lot of resources out there for SEO. As far as like, I'm trying to think how to like simplify this down really quick. But I would say Google Search Console. So find out what people are landing on your site for already. And if it's just your name or if there are already terms that they're landing on your site, use that list to find out what's missing. So if you wanted to be showing up for engineering in Cincinnati or structural engineering in Cincinnati or whatever it is that a term that's showing up? And then compare that to different places where there's search traffic. So one that we like that has quite a bit of free capabilities is Neil Patel's Ubersuggest. Another one, the SpyFu, SEMrush, they all have the free trials. So compare them to keyword traffic volume and look at your Google Search Console results and kind of make a comparison on how you're doing. And then on-page SEO, if you are using WordPress, get Yoast or one of its competitors on your site and start making all the bubbles turn green and start playing with that. Yeah, and if you'd like to know more, reach out to us because we do a whole other presentation on that and it's hard to cover in 2 minutes.
Or come see us in Heartland, right?
I was about to say, or people could just go see you at Heartland. So it seems like another good shameless plug for Heartland.
I think also we have a lot of people who come to us for looking for help with this, but they haven't even engaged Google Analytics yet on their site. So starting with making sure you have Google Analytics and access to it, and then also the console, Search Console. Yeah.
Yep, and be really targeted in what it is that you're trying to show up for. So, you know, a lot of clients or firm leaders might say, hey, I want to show up on the first page of Google, and we'll say, for what, right? Like you can't just show up. So let's identify what those keywords are. Let's identify what the long tail keywords are that is low in the funnel traffic that's going to produce leads for you.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, ladies. I'll ask one more time if I know, thank you for everybody for using Poll Everywhere, but does anybody have any last questions before we close it out with Amanda and Amy? Well, doesn't sound like it. So thank you, ladies. Thank you so much for your time. This was wonderful. We really appreciate it. I wanted to let everybody know that next month, March 16th is our next SMPS event. It is going to be held at Ratio, and we are going to be hearing from Molly Lauk. She's the director of social media for Wipro, which is a global tech company. And she's going to be talking about creating your digital presence through social media. So you guys should be seeing that that come through in the next few days through SMPS Indiana's chapter site. So you'll see that come through on the website. So not only is she going to talk about your personal branding, but she's also going to help you talk about, you know, for those of us who are over social media or run our social medias in our marketing departments. She's going to talk about company and also personal branding. So like I said, it's going to be at Ratio on March 16th at 3:30. Registration will begin at 3 o'clock. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Megan, me, or myself. And Amy and Amanda, thank you so much for your time and for the presentation. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.